Mick, your marathon is run and done. How are the legs feeling, mate?
Very sore today, but got a medal to show for it.
Oh, look at you, proud as punch.
Nah, just kidding. Nah.
When's
Yeah,
the
no,
appropriate time frame to take off your medal after a race?
hey.
When's the appropriate time frame to take off your medal after a
Oh,
race?
to be honest, I forgot it was there. I was that focused on making sure I could, get to the 10 meters further down the road. It was tough times. Yeah, no, but it was a really good event. I highly recommend anyone down here in Victoria or interstate if they're into their running. It's a superb event. It is a hard course. Lots of headwind. A lot of hills, never-ending hills, and I think no matter where you run a half marathon or a marathon or any sort of long race, that the last 10% of that race is always going to be a difficult task, and that it was again on the weekend. But so happy I did it. So happy I've got 2 weeks of no running coming up, and yeah, just looking forward to getting back into the swing of things without having to worry about running 3 or 4 times a week. So very happy, ready to get stuck into chat about an incredible weekend of sport once again, highlighted by the turf racing right around Australia.
It was a huge day of racing, but for me, the Queenslanders, oh my gosh, we were up and about here at Doomben on Saturday. Now, before we get into the Doomben 10,000 action, I must say how impressed I was with Cool Archie in the Spirit of Boom. This juvenile is actually quite remarkable, I think. 3 wins on the trot, absolutely swims on a heavy track, and I think he's only got bigger and better things to come as we head further into the Winter Carnival. Mick, did you get to catch the run, or were you deep in your run?
I did get to catch a replay of the run, and just having a look on social media is a good way to catch up if you haven't been watching. And the talk was about Team Months. They are absolutely flying.
They are Chris's birthday. He got a cheeky listed double. Obviously, Brookhaven took out the Burnborough earlier in the card. And just what a remarkable team. Another Queenslander, though, that I did have my eye on the day was El Morzillo for Kelly Schweida. That was just a peach of a ride from Jason Collett. Trailed nicely and then just presented the horse at the right time. Great run. But one thing I really appreciate about Kel, he's a stalwart up here at Eagle Farm, and he just always has his horses primed at this time of carnival. They are absolutely peaking. Even Grafter Burners had a huge run behind Cool Archie in the Spirit of Boom. And if it wasn't for that heavy track, he probably would have been a bit closer. So there's so much action going on here at the Brisbane Winter Carnival. But obviously, our highlight of the day, the Doomben 10,000, Sunshine in Paris. What a bloody mare.
Just too good in the end. And, we can probably, across this show talk about a couple of the key runs in the Doom and 10,000. But, at one stage just, I was thinking Rothfire was home. I
So was
really thought
I.
Rothfire had, especially after the way that he was able to hit the lead and hold on last start. I just thought there was going to be improvement and I just thought there was a bit of a fairy tale story there waiting to unfold. But it's almost like J Mac kind of hit a little bit of a flat spot on Sunshine in Paris, a little bit up the straight, and that's when I thought Rothfire had got the race
Yeah.
um and Payline too.
Oh my God, we need to talk about that run. So this horse, 50 to 1, an absolute kamikaze ride from Justin Huxtable. I am still half rattled about it and half thrilled about it because I don't think anyone genuinely thought that Payline was in this race. Now, that ride, he's copped 17-day suspension. Fair, unfair? What are your thoughts?
I'd have to go back and watch it again to give you my opinion on whether it's fair or unfair. But um, one thing I can say is that if he got up, it'd be a historic day for Team Mutt. You can say that. But at the same time, I think, and it's easy for me. I've never ridden a horse. I'm definitely not a jockey. But I feel as if Payline just stuck to that inside lane and followed Libertad into the race. I really think that the gap that it eventually went through, it wouldn't have to gone outside and come back in, and I think it would have won the race. So.
I think so.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and have a look at whether it was fair or unfair. But wow, yeah, the first thing I thought of was if that horse won, um, it would have been one of the biggest days by a Queensland trainer.
Oh, yeah.
Ever. And it's the right time of year to do it. And yeah, well, how big are this stable going to get? I think they've proven enough now. Chris Muntz, even when he was by himself training, I think he'd started to really prove that he can get the most out of any horse.
And now he's got Corey joining side too. And
Yep.
they just keep expanding. Obviously, they're based out of Eagle Farm. They've now got a farm at Beaudesert for their spellers, early pre trainers. And they've just opened up a base here on the Gold Coast. So I think they are just going to continue their dominance, continue getting these good horses. And I think this is a real testament to Chris Muntz's trust and faith in Justin Huxtable. Obviously, Justin was apprenticed to Chris for a very long while. And unfortunately, outside of the racing world, Justin's caught himself in a couple of headaches. And it would have been easy for Chris Muntz to sort of leave him behind, but he just keeps giving him chances. And in a race like this, it was great to see Huxie actually prove himself and prove that this is a really fruitful relationship. And he could have won a Group 1 with Chris Muntz. It would have just been a story for the ages.
Yeah, isn't it just crazy though? You see a horse, paying, what was it? You say 51 to 1?
Yeah,
Like the way it ran and the way it performed, it could have been, a $4 or $5 shot in that field. It
definitely.
just, it never, you never get used to that part of racing. These horses that just, you know, outrun these big prices.
Mm.
And as I said,
And the bravery of him,
I think the
to
horse could have
just
won.
I think so too. It was just so brave the way he came in. Obviously, where Justin's caught himself in a bit of trouble was he impeded
Mhm.
Libertad's run, which then checked, not Oztracker. Wow, I'm talking about a completely different horse, Overpass. But he obviously checked Overpass as he was coming in there. And just for Payline to continue the run the way he did and hit the line so strong, what a horse. And I can't wait to see where they continue to place him, because I think we won't be seeing the 50 to 1 quote ever again.
The price is gone, and there's probably going to be a bit of a month's tax now on horses. They're all going to be a little bit shorter than what the data suggests and what the bookies suggest because they just keep turning up and they keep performing.
Yeah. Now, I want to know, obviously, a lot of the conversation has been around that 20% loading that Huxley has got. Being a Group 1 race, he obviously charged with careless riding because of that mid race move that he made. But when there's a Group 1 on the line, as a jockey, what would you do? Would you take that run the risk of being suspended to try and get a Group 1 when you know how much horse you have underneath you? Or do you sit back idly by and not risk your time in the saddle during Winter Carnival?
I think all jockeys take the risk. I think, the fact that they're sitting atop these horses, they're 600 kilos, they move at 70 kilometers an hour. That's a risk in itself. I think, if they're in one of the biggest races of, this season, this Queensland Carnival, and there's a chance to take a risk and have eternal glory as a Group 1 jockey in a famous race that went down to the wire, I think they're always going to take that risk. And look, I can't say what I'd do if I was a jockey. As I said, I've never sat on top of a horse, but yeah, I'm putting myself in their shoes. They're risk takers by nature, so I can't imagine there's going to be any difference.
Have you never rode a horse full stop or never
Uh,
rode a racehorse?
I've never, I've never like my cousins were very good equestrian riders growing up, so I was always around horses, but not race horses. So I'm
Yeah.
sat on the back of pretty, retired race horses with braids in their hair and ribbons on, but never saddled up one before. And I don't,
Never quite needed the bravery of a jockey.
yeah, and yeah, being 6'2" doesn't help either.
No, it definitely wouldn't. I didn't realize you were that tall.
Go learn something every day.
Anyhow, outside of the Doomben 10,000, Sir Delius caused quite the buzz up here at Doomben. He certainly lived up to his price tag. What did you make of the run?
Yeah, it was my favourite win of the weekend. I was very keen to see this horse get around, and I think the hype behind these expensive imports is always present, but more often than not, it comes, with a hint of doubt based on how a lot of
Mm.
these, staying imports come over and they struggle to adapt to the conditions right off the bat. You look at your horses like Buckaroo took his time to get into the groove and adjust to Australian conditions, whereas you got horses like Solcombe who came out first run in Australia and absolutely bolted in. So there's always this aspect of doubt. But, I think Sir Delius was everything but those doubts. He delivered in spades on his Aussie debut and sat beautifully in behind the speed and absolutely trucking behind that speed with his head in the air. And you could tell from a long way out that, even despite floating, being able to get out and get that lead, that as soon as Tim Clark was going to press the button, this horse was going to respond. And he, got to justify that $1.70 plunge and justify the talk around these, races like the Melbourne Cup. Yeah, I thought it was a monster run, and they can start looking towards a Melbourne Cup, I think, at this stage. And
Mm.
the son of Frankel, I think, he's going to get out over further. And the owner, Sir Owen Glenn, he's desperate to win the great race, the Melbourne Cup, and I think that's
Mm.
exactly where they're going to go. And I think he's proven his worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that form line, eighth in an Arc de Triomphe, he so appreciated that heavy track, which I think that we're going to continue to see up here in Brisbane with the big wet. And then leading into the spring, this horse just screams wet tracker, needs further, Melbourne Cup, Melbourne Cup, Melbourne Cup.
Absolutely.
And we obviously saw that reflected with the market. Obviously, he's come right into $15 for the Melbourne Cup. Do we think at this stage he looks like a genuine contender? He's got the Q22 ahead of him and then the rest of his spring preparation. Has the market gone too early here, as we often see with these imports, or is he a genuine $15 contender for the Melbourne Cup?
I'll answer both and parts of those questions. Absolutely, he's a contender for a Melbourne Cup. Has the market adjusted incorrectly as per every single time we see a good import, especially in imported stay go around? Yes, it's a problem, and it's probably something that we're never going to see adjusted either. I think
Mm.
these horses, there's just so much doubt in general around the Melbourne Cup. Are the imports who are still overseas going to be able to, make it over with all the vetting protocols? Some of these horses run in races through September and October, like the Archer and the Bart Cummings, and don't pull up too well. And you get these ambiguous kind of looks at fields, and you just wonder whether the bookies kind of, panic a little bit and wonder, well, there's a lot of hype behind this horse. A lot of people are going to get on. Let's put it in short, nice and short now, and prevent that. So it's a strange one for me. But to answer your question, Sir Delius is 100% a Melbourne Cup contender, and you just look at the stable. I can't imagine Tim Clark's, rushing to get off this horse. And yeah, there's a clear task. There's a clear path towards this race for this horse, and I'm a big fan. And yeah, further the better for sure.
In recent times, we've really seen, like you said, these European imports and then the horses that come over from Europe to race in the Melbourne Cup and all of our staying races for that matter absolutely dominate. You even look back to the Sydney Cup. I think Zardozi was the only Australian foaled horse in that field, but he still was from UK bloodlines, obviously a son of Kingman. And do you think that we're going to continue to see this decline of local stayers in our races, or is it just a game for the overseas player now?
Yeah. Look, we clearly do have a trend in Australia. When it comes to breeding, we love to breed these horses, as we spoke about last week with a lot of these young colts. We want to take them to preludes and previews and diamonds and slippers and
Mm.
get that black type on the record, uh, hoping that they're going to go to stud, and that's the financial kicker in this conversation. And yeah, these big stables and studs, it's all a business, and they've got to meet quotas, they've got to meet targets, and that's starting to show in our staying ranks. We get the odd good stayer every now and again, but yeah, you asked the question, is it a game for the overseas horses and the internationals? I think it has been for quite some time.
They've definitely been dominating. Well, back at HQ, one of my highlights for the weekend was Lims Kosciusko in the straight six. Although he didn't win, his run was so impressive. I assume it was one of your highlights for the day too.
Oh, absolutely. It's not often a trainer of a horse is thrilled to run into second or third in any race. But I'm sure that the Mar team and more particularly Dan Mar would be absolutely stoked with the return of Lims Kosciusko. He posed up beautifully behind Marble Nine. Again, I think a bad luck story. We spoke about the bad luck story with Payline. I think it was the same with Limbs Kosciusko. He was blocked early on as he tried to amble out by the subsequent winner and title fighter, and then had to get shuffled back. Met adversity two or three times down that straight. Tried to come out again and was blocked in by DK, who was super in second. I don't know if you've gone back and watched the replay, but DK was also a massive run. But yeah, he gave 6.5 kilos to the field. He was on debut in Australia. He had his first proper float trip to a racetrack. First time up the straight, first time on a properly rain affected track. Green ticks everywhere for Lim
Yeah.
Kosciusko because I think he was, a good thing beaten. And not only do I think Limbs Kosciusko is in the mix for some nice races in the spring, I'd love to see him tackle the straight again very soon. I think that, it's a type of race that he can definitely, I don't know about you, but I think it's a race and a style that he can add to his arsenal, and he might have already proven it to us.
I think so too. Just the way he continued to accelerate up that straight. I was just so impressed by the old boy. Obviously, we all thought that his best was behind him, but I think he has truly declared himself as a warning sign for the rest of Australian racing. Particularly, I was actually talking to Dan this morning. He can't confirm yet where Cozzy will head, but the horse has pulled up great, and he said obviously either a Stradbroke or stay in Melbourne, gear up towards the spring. But he just said this horse just gets better and better and better, and they can't be any prouder. But for me, I would love to see him come up here for a Stradbroke. I think, like we discussed the other week, I think that handicapping system is only going to play into his favour as he comes up here, contesting the likes of, our best sprinters in the land. He's not going to see that 60 kilos that he did see in this race. Going to have that lovely bend at Eagle Farm, plenty of straight to warm into his run. I think that this could be the race for him to get his international Group 1. And I might be biased, but I'd just love to see him come up here.
Oh, absolutely. I think, all these, as we spoke about last week, all these horses who are winning big and, showing that they're capable during this, late autumn winter season. There's all these spots up for grabs up in Queensland. And I think all the trainers who have a good horse in their stable that's winning in town down here in Melbourne at the moment are really considering, taking their horses up. And, in that same race, I'm sure Graham Begg and Chris Hyland were hoping that King's Effort was going to come out and win that race
Yeah.
and head up to Queensland. But off to the paddock for King's Effort.
Yeah, what did you make of that run? Like the rest of the nation, you were with him, you gave him a huge push. Was it just the conditions on the day that saw him come undone, or just tail it off towards the end of his prep?
Yeah, well, I think that's the benefit of the straight six at Flemington. You really get to test horses from a number of different angles. For Limbs Kosciusko, for example, was a great day. They learnt that he can handle a wet track. He can carry weight. He can remain calm and comfortable in that float on the way to Flemington. But yeah, I think the hype train behind King's F is still rolling. I might have been a little blinded by the bright lights of the hype behind this horse, but same thing. First time on a wet track, first time going up the straight. Wasn't in the best part of the track, and maybe a prep that was maybe one run too long, but they had a crack. Yeah, that said, 4 wins on the bounce for this horse, this prep, and I think it's a great decision. I think they would have gone to bed Saturday night, both Graham Begg and Chris Holland, and been stoked that they've got a horse who's going to go back to the paddocks, going to mature, get stronger, and come back in the spring and really contest for some good races. I'm definitely still on the King's Effort hype train, but yeah, it just wasn't to be on the weekend, and maybe next winter we'll see King's Effort up in Queensland contending for a Stradbroke.
Yeah, we'd all love to see that, wouldn't we? Now, one of our feel good stories for the weekend was Scott Singleton achieving his biggest career milestone to date, with Melody again saluting in the Dark Jewel, local trainer, and just a great all round story with the jockey, the owners. You just love to see stories like this in racing, don't you?
Absolutely. And how about the win? I know I said to you after the show
Huge.
last week, you're a massive fan of Team Archibald, and there's one at Scone who I was really keen on, and that was Written in Code. And geez, when Written in Code hit the front, I was gave a little jiggle and a little dance, and I thought it was absolutely home. But yeah, to win like that, Melody again, and geez, what a way to do it. I think there's always great stories behind. getting your first win, your first stakes win, your first group win, but to do it like that and have that video and that story to tell forever for owners, for the jockey, for Scott Singleton, it's a massive story, and hats off to their whole team.
Yeah, it was remarkable. Obviously, as you alluded to, the horse has made a bit of a habit lately of jumping tardy from the gates. And Christian Reith, the jockey, said she's such a tricky mare in that you can't give her a kick up the guts and expect her to go because she's going to go too hard. You can't present her a gap too early because she's just going to bolt on you. And there's no bringing her back. She's a tough little mare. So to see her obviously jump late, the team must have thought that that day was already over, and she just travelled up so well. Great ride from Christian to keep her contained until she actually did make her run. And such a great all-round story. Scott actually said that Christian rode his first ever winner for him as a trainer
Wow.
some 20 years ago. And then the ownership group were some of the first backers of the stable. So it really just puts a bow on a win like this at your home track, the loyalty of trainer, owner and jockey relationships. As we said with Justin and Chris Muntz, it's just a beautiful story of
Mhm.
how great our game is and the friendships and relationships you build along the way.
Oh, absolutely. That's news to me, and that just makes the story all the sweeter. And no matter where the racing is, what time it is, time of the year it is, I should say, racing just continues to deliver stories. And the
Yeah.
fact that you and I get to sit here and talk about them is a pleasure in itself. But yeah, that's one definitely up there as the story of the week.
Yeah. We also had an absolute thriller overseas with the winning of the Preakness Stakes by Journalism. He absolutely launched late after a gut buster. Did you get to watch the run?
I did, I did. Well, I didn't get to watch it live, but I've seen a replay of the race, and yeah, to overcome that adversity and get sandwiched between two horses, for the jockey to, maintain the balance and run down the leader who had the rails run, and just, oh, they would have been celebrating almost, the owners and team behind the leader. Pardon me, I forget the name of the horse that was up front, but Journalism has just proved once again, that it's a class above. It's an absolute class above.
Yeah.
And, could have ideally, two of the Triple Crown already, with some good luck last start. But I think I wrote down after I watched that replay that I have to get to these races at some point in the next 5 years.
Right. It's just such theatre outside of all of the action on the race course. Just hearing the scream of everyone as he came up the straight, obviously he has so many fans, as well as Sandman, who trailed on closely for
Mhm.
third. It was just listening through the television. I had goosebumps. And then at the end of the race, obviously, Umberto just cuddling the horse. The horse is walking in with his ears pricked, so proud of himself. And Umberto had just secured his first USA Classic race. It was a moment of pure emotion, and we need to get over there. How do we convince Racing X to send us over there to cover it?
Oh,
So I need to see it
I'm
too.
putting my hand up right now. But it's yeah, it's an event. It's an event with just so many different angles and so many different stories. And to have the race unfold the way it did, with three different stories, still
Mm,
alive in that final furlong and a half. Uh, yeah, it makes for a movie almost every year. It's just
yeah.
superb, and there is that different vibe that we don't have here in Australia. And I always talk about the commentary of these races too. It's so different to the way we and our callers here in Australia and right across the world deliver their races. It's like theatre, and it's
Mm.
just refreshing. It's refreshing to see, and it's always a great time of year. We get to talk about racing right across the world, and it has its own flavor, and it's just so good to be able to compare them.
Yeah, that triple crown effect of just bringing the whole audience in, all eyes are locked on. And even like you were saying, the caller, you think he had $100 on every runner in the race. That's how thrilled he was to see anyone get a run. It was just huge. And the way that they called that dogfight, like it truly was a dogfight, having, the horse come in on him as he's trying to make the run, Journalism, and then checking the other runner. And what a horse to just keep squeezing through, make his run. He must have so much faith in his jockey. and so much faith in himself to just not pull up and call it a day.
Yeah, it's one part of, the talent in many horses that you can't really teach is the will to win. And, I feel like from an outsider's view, some horses just look like that they know they're in a race and they know they need to be first past that post. And some can have all the talent in the world and they don't know they're in a race. And journalism's definitely one that ticks the box who knows that he has to be the first past the post. And geez, I think that's one of the best wins I've seen all year.
Well, back on the home front, we're looking ahead, and Revelare has hefty ambitions as we're looking so far ahead as the spring. Mick, he's back. Where are we headed?
Yeah, I think, we get to see horses who have performed right through the winter go and have a break now, like King Zephyr, and us Victorians get to start thinking about the return of some boom horses through the autumn. And there was no bigger than Revelare through the autumn. Actually, I should say through the summer as well. I think he strung 5 wins together. 4 of them came in 2025, and they were all eye-catching. And we all recognise this horse to be one that is going to be contending in big races come the Spring Carnival, and one of those definitely being the Melbourne Cup. And I think he was going to have his chance to earn a ticket early doors in the Roy Higgins, but illness got the better of him. And Rob Hickmott said, I think I'm going to imagine that he said, I've got a really good horse here, and I'm happy to put him away and make sure everything's right, and set a lovely plan heading into Spring Carnival. And I think he's going to get back to the races around August and look towards either an Archer Stakes or a Bart Cummings or both. I think, if these owners can get 2 bites at the cherry to get that ticket into the Melbourne Cup, it's going to be on their agenda. But I think the Bart Cummings looks the one perfect for Revelare. I think it's a bit later in the year. It's October. I'm not sure if Revelare is going to be able to get out to that, 2,500 in September. But who knows how this horse is going to come back. I guess the next couple of weeks are going to tell a lot. But yeah, it's very exciting, and the horse is a special talent, and I've got massive expectations for some of these big races and maybe a few of the big handicaps come Spring Carnival.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. And I'm intrigued to see, obviously, the progression they take with this horse. He hasn't had too long out. Do they just jump him straight into the 1800? Do they give him a mile? How do they build up to these sorts of races? As you were saying, will he be peaking come Archer Stakes or Bart Cummings? But I think the only person who is nervous now is regular jockey Ryan Hurdle. Unfortunately, he is one of Victoria's heavyweights. And as we look towards a Melbourne Cup, Bart Cummings, and then even as soon as an Archer, he's looking like he'll probably be the unlucky one to not make weights. Now, Mick, if you could take the reins and decide on who is jumping in that saddle, who would you have ride this horse?
J-Mac.
J-Mac.
Well,
I think everyone says that.
I think that's the answer. I think if anyone's asking that question, it's going to be J-Mac. But look, if I'm looking at it from a likely standpoint, I think Harry Coffey's had the call up before to ride Revelare when the horse had 54 and he's back. Harry Coffey's done it at the highest level. He's won a Caulfield Cup and just recently with Duke de Sessa. So when it comes to those staying trips and being able to dictate the pace and know when to push the button, Harry Coffey's got all the experience in the world. I think Theo Nugent's also definitely one to watch. Does plenty of riding for the Hickmott stable. If I got my choice of Victorian jockeys, I can't look past Ethan Brown. If he gets the choice at anyone, I am absolutely gobsmacked by just the progression that Ethan Brown continues to make. He's a premier jockey now right across Australia. And I think, before too long, he's going to be the best jockey in Australia.
It's an interesting conversation, this, and it always comes up around, obviously, Melbourne Cup time. A lot of the nation's best jockeys are now too heavy for a ride in the Melbourne Cup. You even look last year just gone, James McDonald didn't have a ride. And
Yep.
I think as low as he sort of goes is that 55, 54 and a half. I obviously can't speak for his weight at the moment, but it is such a taxing thing on these jockeys. And you look at the jockeys that did make the Cup, a lot of people probably wouldn't have thought that Robbie Dolan would have got a ride, but that lightweight advantage has caused him to be etched in the history books forever. Now, back to my point before I begun that rant. Do you believe that the weights need to be upped as a whole, or for these staying races, they do need to remain as light as possible?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Look, I guess it won't have too much of an effect if everything's kind of, weighted, adjusted, I should say, relatively. What that looks like, I don't know. I think that's up to the handicappers on what those weights look like over, especially like a distance like the 2 mile, where the weights actually start to have a real genuine effect. I think over those shorter trips, it matters less. But, in these handicaps, for these jockeys to get opportunities. And, you see, jockeys like, Mick D, I think Jay Ford's another lightweight jockey, Craig Williams. They get a lot of these really good rides in some of these races, even some of the weight for age races, the really good 3-year-olds that get into some races. I remember Castelvecchio when it was running the Cox Plate and Craig Williams was aboard, and they get lots of good opportunities, lots and lots of good opportunities that others just miss out on, whether it might be a kilo that they can't get down because not only is it they can't make weight, but if they're trying to, it's also very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous, the whole weight cutting and being able to perform at the highest level. So, I guess there is room to make adjustments on that front, but at the moment, these lightweight jockeys are just absolutely relishing it.
It's such an advantage, isn't it, when you can get on these horses nice and early, enjoy the heavyweight, and slowly make your way down to those lightweights. It must be a true privilege to be a lightweight jockey, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, technically they're all pretty lightweight, but it's funny.
Isn't it remarkable that we say 61 kilos is heavy in this industry? Crazy.
I know. Well, I think more than anything, it blows my mind that there are jockeys like your Mick D's who can get down to 50 kilos. And I think it's a testament to themselves, that yes, they're lightweight, but that's no easy feat to be turning up, riding a full card and knowing you have to be 50 and a half for the biggest race of the day where you've got to be your most focused. It's probably your 8th ride of the day. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. And, I'm not talking from experience, but it's the same in the combat sports. The boxers and fighters, they're all cutting weight and, a day later have to perform and get into a cage and try and kill someone.
At least they have the advantage of being able to hydrate in between.
Absolutely.
The poor jockeys, I'm sure, would do anything to have a sip of water throughout the day.
It's a task in itself. But yeah, look, I think Ryan Hurdle, coming back to Revelare, he's prepared for that. I think, I think he's got the pleasure of working with this horse day in, day out as the main rider and man in town down there at the Hickmott stable, along with Teo Nugent. And I think Teo Nugent and Harry Coffey, they look the two likely ones for me.
Yeah. Well, as we continue to look ahead, obviously this weekend just gone, we nailed the warning sign. Sunshine in Paris stole Rothfire's prize money. But looking ahead this weekend, the headlines are all Antino versus Pride of Jenny. But as a bit of a Archibald racing fan, as you said before, the biggest question on my mind is, will they continue their stranglehold over the Queensland Carnival, or have they just secured enough of the bag? They have a huge card heading into the Doomben Cup this weekend. Mick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, their gun runner form just, it's never ending. And it continued, as you said, Sunshine in Paris wins the 10,000 in a thriller and, edging out our boy Rothfire. I was thinking about it this morning. But, with this big chunk of the carnival still to come, the Archibald stable are putting together a streak that, could almost become a historic streak. And, I think they're going to the track with a lot more confidence on Saturday than the market suggests. And, one thing I love about Team Archibald, and more so just recently, is they love the challenge. They're starting to market themselves really well away from the racing. And I think Rob adds a lot of spice. He loves to talk about the pleasure of being an underdog and, being a little bit disrespected maybe in the market. And they're not shying away from that. And it's really building their brand, and the mindset continues this weekend with the Doomben Cup.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Rob Archibald's very confident with the prospects of Faulkner Park in behind Antino, Jenny, and of course Buckaroo as well.
I don't know if you've met Annabelle, but obviously I've had a close relationship with her for a while, and she is arguably the most competitive person I have ever met in my life. I truly think, like you were saying, she relishes the challenge. She wants to be able to be there and compete and prove herself, and that's why she has just had this constant upwards trajectory of success, because we're an industry where you need to be just so competitive. And this race is a race that they have just had a stranglehold on over the years. Obviously, Zaki won it a few years back. Bois d'Argent won it last year, contesting it again. Faulkner Park ran third last year. It was a huge run. And then he went on to win the Q22 afterwards. They are just staying machines. They love racing up here in Queensland. The biggest question mark for me will be, does this rain stay around? Because Doomben is not our best wet track, unfortunately, up here.
Yeah, that is always the question this time of year. I think anywhere in the country is what's the rain doing? And the rain hasn't seemed to stop up north in those northern states, and it really does start to show when you see the mud flicking around. And I love it's actually quite a great scene is when the big fields whip around a corner of a nice Queensland track, and there's just mud flying everywhere. And I love it. It adds a nice little spice to any race. But yeah, I think if the rain continues and it's muddy on the weekend, I think Antino is going to have a stranglehold on this field. I really do. I think, I can understand why someone like Rob Archibald's confident with Faulkner. This time last year, that win in the Q22 was one of the best wins of the year, let alone best wins of the Queensland Carnival. And yeah, I'd be confident too. It's the same time of year. I'm sure they've ticked all the boxes that they did last year and probably more. You talk about that competitive aspect. I can only imagine that last weekend, I think you said it yourself, Annabelle and Rob would have had every single box ticked with Sunshine in Paris heading into that Group 1. And I think that's going to be happening again. And that's where the confidence comes from. But if I'm going off recent form and just a replay of that Hollandale, I think Antino's got the ability to put this race away in just a couple of strides at the top of the straight. And I think that comes off the back of having a really, really good jockey that knows the horse. And Blake Shin is going to come into this race firing, given the fact that he didn't get to ride in the 10,000. And he made a big call, and a call that he's going to make sure it was all worth it by winning a Group 1. I think Antino's the one to beat.
Yeah, I think Faulkner Park could be more competitive than we give him credit for here. I don't know if he ran in the placings behind Antino in the Hollandale, but he ran a lot better than we all expected he would on that heavy track. So I wouldn't be surprised if he could shake things up here. But he has made a bit of a habit of running in the placings, despite how well primed he's been. This whole preparation, he's ran fourths and thirds and fourth and third again. He just can't seem to get that little bit further. But seeing where this horse was this time last year when we had him up here at Eagle Farm, he's typical import. He's just always got a bit hairy, and he's carries a fair bit of condition. He looks like a bit of a granddad with a pot belly sometimes. But I saw him on Golden Slipper Day when he ran behind Via Sistina in the Ranvet. That was a huge run. And this horse looked like something I'd never seen from him before. He just had most beautifully dappled coat. He looked stunning, nice and trim and fit. And one thing I really love about this horse, him and Bois d'Argent couldn't be any more different from each other in terms of temperament. Bois d'Argent, in his behaviour, is like the grandpa of the stable. He's the old veteran. He's so chill. He'll let you do anything to him. He's just gorgeous by nature. Faulkner Park is so well behaved, but he has that bit of cheek like a young boy about him. He's just bouncing out of his skin. He's always got something going on. He's just this fun, lively horse to have in the stable, and I think that could set him in really good stead as he comes into a race like this. He's obviously been up for a long time. He's going to go to a Q22 afterwards, but he could be up and about. He looks magnificent. He really surprised us on that wet track. I'm going to be jumping on him nice and early and getting some value, and hopefully even an each way play could pay off at his price.
Yeah, I think any sort of big run from Faulkner Park, whether he wins or not this weekend, there'll be some deductions on that price for the Q22. I think you can tell me, is that the grand final for Faulkner Park, Q22?
Yeah, it would be. That'll be obviously, he's looking to keep his title crown, and I think that will be his grand final. Then he'll go out for a little bit, potentially come back later on in the spring.
Do you think Pride of Jenny can run a good race this weekend?
I don't know. Jenny, I've honestly given up with trying to predict how she's going to run. She just seems to go really well one start and then puts in a gut buster the next, but disappoints the market. And I think maybe disappoints too strong of a word there. It's just the hype around her. Everyone wants to see her just jump and lead and dominate and give nothing else a chance, which I think is too much to ask of a mare of her age that has been up and racing as competitively as she has the whole time. I certainly can't disrespect her, but I don't know if she is a genuine contender in this.
Yeah, I love Pride of Jenny. I think you already know that. I love the spectacle of how she races, and I love the fact that now she's back and contending in some races that are probably a lot below the grade she's been running at for a long time. But I think in a race like this weekend, I would not be surprised one bit if she's the first horse beat, and she's the favourite, which is crazy to say. And I hope I'm proven wrong, and I hope she's in there for the finish. But in the top 4 or 5 horses in the market, she's down the bottom of that for mine. I'm very surprised with the price.
Yeah, I'm just nervous with her again with how the track is going to play, and it looked a bit chopped out and horrid towards the end of the day there on Saturday, so it's going to need a lot of TLC during the week, and I think she's just going to need everything to go right for her in this instance.
Well, we're going to talk about it a lot more on Thursday.
Yeah, we're going to have the barriers, we're going to have the final words. I'm going to try and get my ear to the ground as to the gallops and how everyone is tracking in the last minute lead up. So I'll report back when we catch up on Thursday.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And there's sport coming out of our ears right around Australia, and always look forward to a Thursday. As you said, you start to get the details, you start to hear the tips flying around, who's going well, what the track looks like. I think it's the most important thing up in Queensland this time of year. But yeah, we're going to unpack it and really dive into who are the horses that are going to be contending against the locals. I think that's always the big question, and what are the warning signs?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you rest up because we've got a big day coming Thursday, and we'll catch up later in the week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Bella.